Hi there, this is Sage Queen from GameTourist.com, and this is video 2 of my guide to the Adept for Mass Effect 2. Now, last video was an intro and also a brief look back to Mass Effect 1. I thought at first the Adept was a little too prissy for Shepard. I really felt that Vanguard was the only self-respecting way to be a biotic, and I only played Adept so that I could unlock Singularity. But I got addicted to the class, and I gotta say, it is a lot of fun, and in Mass Effect 2, it, I think, is even more fun. Now, the gameplay changes to Mass Effect 2 from Mass Effect 1 affected all the classes, obviously, but the ones that particularly deal with the Adept class are these. The skills now are all on the same reset timer. In Mass Effect 1, the skills were all on separate recharge timers. What that meant for the Adept was you could toss somebody into a wall, you could lift somebody, you could pull Singularity, you could pull Warp, and then you could shoot some stuff, you could throw on a barrier. You could do it all at the same time, or very quick succession. In Mass Effect 2, however, all the skills are on the same recharge timer. As soon as you use one, you have to wait a second or two until the whole skill set recharges, and then you get to use another skill. Essentially, you only get to use one skill every couple of seconds. It means you have to be a lot more precise about what you want to use and why. And in my experience with Mass Effect 2, that generally ends up meaning that you use the same kind of skill over and over, or you end up using one skill for this situation and one skill for this situation. It's a lot less throw everything at them and a lot more let's be pretty precise about it. That's very true for all the classes, I think, but I think especially for the Adept because your skills are so powerful and you have things like Singularity. One of the other things that affected all the classes was the Heatsink thing. In Mass Effect 1, guns basically shot as many bullets as you like. They kind of magically made bullets. You can look into the codex to see their scientific reason as to why. In Mass Effect 2, heatsinks were invented to keep guns from overheating, which sometimes happened in Mass Effect 1, would keep you from firing for a while. Heat sinks are universal, thank goodness. Every race uses the same heat sink, but it means that you end up essentially being limited to a form of ammo. And if you run out, you got to run around the battlefield picking up more heat sinks. It's kind of a pain. Although on the other hand, it's also kind of a fun challenge. One of the advantages of the Adept is that you have the skill Warp, and I'll get to that in a later video about the Adept skill, but it's essentially a giant cannon fire, so you have at least one offensive skill that you can use at any given time, which is a big old blast. Even if you run out of ammo, you still have Warp up your sleeve. The downside, though, of course, is that the Adept has less guns than the other classes do, so you have less shots. But the biggest thing that you're going to run into in Mass Effect 2 that affects the Adept, at least I think so, is the protection system that's going on for the bad guys. Obviously, like as in many games, the bad guys have a red health bar over them. Once the health bar gets to 0, they're dead. But on harder difficulties and on the bosses, these bad guys also have additional protection. The protection can take 3 forms. One is shields, that'll show up as a blue bar. One is a biotic barrier, that'll show up as a purple bar. And one is armor, and that'll show up as a yellow bar. Now, when you're on the lower difficulties, casual, normal, and veteran, you will see a lot of enemies running around with simple red health bars. Once you get towards the bosses, you're going to see people with additional protection. But the biggest difficulty jump in the game, nearly everybody will tell you this, and I will totally agree, is from veteran to hardcore. Honestly, it's even worse than hardcore to insanity. Insanity, the bad guys just get smarter, but from veteran to hardcore, suddenly everybody has on some form of protection once you leave the tutorial level. Everybody's going to be wearing some form of armor, shielding, or barrier. And this is the key. All of those things act as gravity regulators. Basically, gravity-affecting skills such as throw, pull, and singularity will not send people flying unless you've managed to punch through their protection. And obviously, since the Adept skills of throw, pull, and singularity are pretty darn useful, it basically ends up meaning that as an Adept, the name of your game frequently becomes punch through that person's protection to get at the juicy meat popsicle inside so you can send them flying. So here's a kind of brief guide to the different forms of protection. Suit shields, that is the blue bars, are primarily going to be seen on mercenaries. They're weak to fast-fire weapons. Submachine guns and assault rifles work best against them. They're also weak to disruptor ammo, and they're most weak to overload, particularly heavy overload. We usually blast them right off. Like shielding, biotic barriers are weak to fast-fire weapons. Biotic barriers are the purple ones. They're also weak to warp ammo and to warp, very weak to warp. You don't see them that often. You see them on Eclipse Mercenary Vanguards, you'll see them on higher level Krogan mercenaries, and you will definitely see them on Harbinger, which that is reason enough to want to know how to take them down since he's so annoying. Armor, that's the yellow stuff, is weak to slow fire weapons like heavy pistols, incendiary blast, incendiary ammo, armor-piercing ammo, and it is also weak to warp, though not quite as weak to warp as you might like. That's not a complete list, but that's kind of a good overview for the Adept, because you're going to notice that the Adept skill of warp takes care of 2 of those 3 protection problems, namely it can take out armor and it can take out biotic barriers. So that basically means that your real challenge then is going to be getting past shields so you can again get to the juicy meat popsicle and send your enemies flying if you so choose. And I'm going to talk more about the Adept skills in the next video. From Game Tourist, this is Sage Queen. Happy hunting.